The Log Cabin Trim Tool by Jean Ann Wright has two rulers in one. This portion of the ruler is a 6.5 inch size, and the outside edge of that is marked in white. That is if you would like to make a 6-inch log cabin courthouse steps or half log cabin block. If you use the entire ruler, it is 12.5 inches, so that makes a 12-inch finished log cabin courthouse steps or half log cabin block. The size of the strips is marked on each and the finished size of the squares. So for the 12-inch log cabin, you need a 3-inch finished square, so you start with 3.5-inch square for the center. And the strips finish to 1.5 inches, so you need at least a 2-inch strip. I usually use the 2.5-inch strips that are on the market. And on this one, you need a 1.5-inch finished square, so that needs to be cut to 2 inches. 3/4 inch finished strip here, which means they have to be at least 1.25 inches, so you can use any of the 1.5-inch strips that are on the market. The ruler has gripper around the entire outside edge and around the 6-inch square. This gripper is made of pumice and stops the fabric from sliding when you put it on fabric and apply pressure, so it stays exactly where you need it to be. There are also additional gripper dots to hold it in place. We have an MS tag on the ruler, so if you want to watch this video at any time, you can scan that with your smartphone and watch this video, so you can have it at your fingertips at any time on your phone, or you can visit the Creative Grids website and access that same video and watch it on your TV. And so the first thing you do is cut out your center square. In this particular case, the center square is cut to 2 inches and it finishes 1.5 inches. So I take the 2-inch square, I add logs that are cut at least from fabric that is 1.5 inches wide. In this particular case, I used a kiwi line of fabric, and this is my bin. I have strips in here, pieces of fabric. I don't actually have to cut them to size, but I know they have to be at least 1.5 inches wide to work for this block, so I can trim it down to size. So I added 2 lights on this side, 2 darks on that. If you notice, they aren't all the same width, they're not all the same length. And then I take the ruler, place it on my cutting mat, and I line up this black square on the center black square. Then I take a rotary cutter, trim 2 sides, turn it, and trim the other 2 sides, and I'll end up with a piece that looks just like this. That is absolutely perfect, and my first row of logs are complete and all trimmed down to the exact size. Once I have this done, I will take that block and add another set of logs. Again, you can see that they're not all the same width, they're not all the same length. That doesn't matter because I use the log cabin trim tool to square them up. So this time I use the white square, and I'll place the white square over the center square, trim off 2 sides, turn it, trim it, the other 2 sides, and I will have a log cabin that now has 2 rings of logs going around the entire outside edge. The third time, I'll add another set of logs. Again, they're all different widths, different lengths. It doesn't matter. Your block will look like this, and I move up once again to the center square, and when I center that over the center, I will square up 2 sides, flip it around, square up the other 2 sides, and I'll end up with a perfect 6.5 inch log cabin. Since I'm squaring up each round of logs as I go, if there is any variance in my seam allowances as I'm working my way out, they are corrected as each round of logs is added, so I end up with a perfect square, and no one is going to notice if this log happens to be 3/4 inch and this one is 7/8. It's all corrected in the outside piece, and I have a perfect 6.5 inch square. If you notice on here, there are 2 more squares here. And when I told you about the half log cabin, that is because I continue to use these squares to line up a half log cabin. So those additional squares are only used when you are putting together a half log cabin block. Because for my final trim, I can take this and use this square up here, center that on the block, and trim my outside edges. So you'll only need those if you are making this block. For those of you who are not familiar with a half log cabin, on a traditional log cabin, you are taking a square fabric, adding 2 lights and 2 darks to opposite adjoining sides. On a half log cabin, the square is actually in the corner and you add a light, a dark, a light, dark, light, dark, and work your way out that way. So you still get the effect of light on one side and dark on the other, except you're only sewing to 2 adjoining sides of the block. When you want to do a 12-inch version, this time we will incorporate the entire ruler when we make the block. So I will start with a 3.5-inch cut, which is a 3-inch finished square in the center. Add logs, 2 lights on adjoining sides, 2 darks on adjoining sides, and then I will take the ruler and I will place it so the second square, which in this case is black, is over the center, and I'll be able to trim 2 sides, flip the block, and trim the other 2 sides. So I will end up with a log cabin like this that has all of the edges trimmed. Then for the second round, again, I added 2 lights and 2 darks. This time I will take and use the white square here, center that over the center square, trim 2 sides and trim the others, and I'll end up with a perfect log cabin again. And as quilters, we always have threads. So I'll have 2 lights on 2 sides, 2 darks on 2 sides, and this has been trimmed up to a perfect log cabin. With the third set of rounds, again, I'm adding wider strips because I'm just pulling anything out of my block or out of my bin that is at least 2.5 inches wide. And this time I use the center black square, place that on the center square here, trim around the entire outside edge, and I have a perfect 12.5-inch block. I love that this ruler has both sizes in one ruler because you can sew 4 6-inch blocks together, and that will be the equivalent of a 12-inch block, so you can combine both elements in one project. There are also courthouse steps blocks. In a courthouse steps, you sew lights to 2 opposite sides and then dark to opposite sides, and so you end up like this. You would trim them the exact same way, it's just the sewing sequence is different. Those instructions are included with the ruler, so you will know how to use each one of the blocks and to make whichever design you want. This is the 6-inch size, this is the 12-inch size. And again, opposite lights, opposite darks. And you can incorporate different block designs into the same quilt, different sizes into the same quilt. The half log cabin, I've already showed you the 6-inch size, and here is a 12-inch size. So this is very easy to use, it's fun to use, and it's a great way for your customers to use up all of their scraps.